Hi folks, Canadian Prepper here. So the market is crashing. We got an ominous warning from the WHO and the supply chain just keeps getting worse. Let's talk about it. All right guys, so I'm back in the studio once again tonight. That communist cameraman is still quarantining, but I hear that he's summoning the spirits of Marx, Engels, Trotsky, Lenin, Mao, and Stalin. And through the incantation of those spirits, he should be right as rain by the middle of next week. And we're going to have some excellent, top-notch content for you guys coming out. Everything from how to grow food in minus 35 degrees. Yes, you heard right. We're going to keep having fun while civilization burns around us, all right? So hopefully by the time I release this video, the Fed sneezes in a different direction and the markets go back up. Let's keep our fingers crossed, but it's not looking good, okay? It's not looking good for two reasons. The reason that nobody talks about is that the stocks are overvalued already. Yes, we know. But if the currency is being devalued through inflation, then we know that the stocks are even worth less than the face value. So that's what's really scary to me. Not that the market's crashing. I mean, we know the market's going to crash, but you would expect a melt-up crash at this point, or maybe we already had that. Who knows? I don't even want to talk about it. I don't pay attention to it anymore. Crypto is crashing. The only thing that I'm banking on right now, to be honest, is gold. I've never been a really big gold bug, but I think this is the year that precious metals reassume the podium of the top dog in terms of economic barometers. So let's just see what happens. And now the main course, the WHO has issued an ominous warning. Soaring Omicron cases could lead to more dangerous variants, the WHO warns. So before I get into this, I can already hear people in the comment section. I know what you're thinking. You don't have to tell me, you don't have to verbalize it. I know what you're thinking. The reason why I bring up stories like this is not because I'm petrified about a new deadly variant necessarily. I'm concerned about what the response is going to be, what the reaction is going to be. So 9 months from now, next winter, when a new variant emerges, we were all mentally prepared for it. We had already gotten our ducks in a row. We had already planned out our investment strategies or our preparedness strategies or whatever might be affected by this. We took this into account because I do think they're telegraphing the future with this purely speculative write-up. And you got to look for these little nugget stories which don't get a lot of attention because they're the ones that usually sprout, and later on everybody's talking about it, which is why every variant up until this point, we were on top of it from day one. We knew it was coming. Now, there is another variant that they've discovered in France too that we're going to talk about in a second. But I just want to read you a bit of this article which was prepared for the Associated Press, and it was a WHO representative, and this is what they had to say, okay? Soaring Omicron cases around the globe could increase the risk of a newer, more dangerous variant emerging, the World Health Organization in Europe warned on Tuesday. Now, we all know, you don't have to be the professor in the comments section. We all know that viruses tend to become less virulent over time. That's how they survive. They don't want to kill the host, blah, 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 blah. What they're trying to say here is that we could actually see the opposite come true. Now, all lab leak theory hypotheses aside, suggesting that this thing could potentially become more virulent by either jumping into different species or if it was grown in a lab or whatever the heck, who knows, okay? It's all theory, it's all speculation at this point. This is what they think. This is what they're saying, and we got to go by the reaction, not necessarily if what they're saying is even going to come true or not. While the current variant is spreading like wildfire around the world, it appears to be less severe than initially feared and has raised hopes that the pandemic could be overcome and return life to normality. But the WHO Senior Emergencies Officer, Catherine Smallwood, sounded an ominous note of caution, telling the AFP, Associated Free Press, that the soaring infection rates could have the opposite effect. The more Omicron spreads, the more it transmits and the more it replicates. Duh. The more likely it is to throw out a new variant. Okay, but is that variant going to be worse or better? Who knows? Now, Omicron is lethal. It can cause death. Okay, how likely that is, don't really talk about that here. Maybe a little bit less than Delta, but who's to say what the next variant might throw out? Europe has registered more than 100 million COVID cases since the start of the pandemic and more than 5 million in the last week alone, almost dwarfing what we've seen in the past. We're in a dangerous phase. We're seeing infection rates rise very significantly in Western Europe, and the full impact of that is not yet clear, she said. So a lot of what she's saying here is more of the same. She's just saying that there's a possibility, because there's more of it out there, that there's a greater potential for mutations to occur. Now, on the topic of mutations, okay, France detects a new mutant variant. 12 people are infected. No talk about how much more virulent it is, or if it's more deadly, or if more people are being hospitalized, or if it escapes antibodies or anything like that. All they know is that there's a new variant that they think is of Cameroonian origin, because the person who contacted it visited Cameroon. Now, as I said last summer, I predicted that there was going to be a new variant that came out of Africa. I thought it was going to be more severe at the time. I predicted that it was going to be bad. So I was right about the fact that it came out of Africa, and the reason for that is simple. I'm not Nostradamus. It stands to reason that if you have a population which is largely unaffected by all the initial waves in terms of their healthcare systems being overwhelmed, or not being overwhelmed, obviously, because African populations tend to be leaner and have less cases of obesity, which of course is a major comorbidity factor to increase the risk of hospitalization. We also know that the average age of most African countries is significantly lower. South Africa, for instance, I believe it's in the 20s. Now compare that to a lot of European countries which are in the 40s. So it's no surprise that this is going to affect the aging populations in countries of the world, and that Africa is by and large going to be spared, which has happened. Now, I predicted what I predicted because it stands to reason that if there's this population of people which are largely unaffected and thus not circulating the virus as efficiently, it only stands to reason that the virus would find a way, life would find a way, all right? I know somebody's going to go in the comment section and tell me that viruses aren't alive. Save it, Professor. We know. The virus is going to find a way to infect that population somehow. And people are going to visit there and they're going to bring it back. Now, is it going to be more lethal in that more vulnerable population? I speculated that it would. But it appears, at least in Omicron's case so far, it appears the data suggests that it isn't. Does that mean that every variant that emerges in those younger populations is going to be less lethal? Not necessarily. It could potentially be more dangerous. I still think that the big one is coming. I still think that the big pandemic is coming. And I think that this is all kind of a way to get us ready for that. In a way, I'm not saying it's intentional, whether it's just happenstance or let's not even go down that other rabbit hole of thinking. But I do think that this is creating the infrastructure which may actually help temper the big pandemic that's coming, the one that's going to have that 10% kill rate. Now, let's hope it never happens, but we find ourselves in a hyper sanitized, sterile society now where everybody's a germaphobe and everybody's afraid of a sniffle. And if that's not the kind of environment and population that a nasty virus would thrive in, then I don't know what is. It's just like all those chickens and pigs in the factory farms. They live in these sterile, controlled, conditioned environments, and they're all genetically homogeneous. So they don't have any resistance against something. So a virus goes in there and it just wipes them out because they're used to everything being so controlled. So they can't deal with any adversity, biological adversity whatsoever. And I feel that in some ways we're setting ourselves up for that. We're now becoming highly dependent on various interventions. I'm not saying they're not doing anything. I'm not saying they're not good, but there's a double-edged sword to everything, okay? There's always going to be potential side effects, which down the road could be potential worse. I'm not talking about side effects of the thing. I'm talking about just unintended consequences, okay? I'm talking about things which could manifest down the road as a result of how we are structuring our approach to this thing, the economic repercussions, the mental health repercussions. All these things could create an environment that we are going to be far more vulnerable when the big pandemic hits, but there are going to be those infrastructural benefits now and those lessons that we've all learned now that we've all been conditioned and primed to behave in certain ways that might limit the spread of such a thing. Everybody knows what a lockdown is now. Everybody knows what a quarantine is now. Everybody knows what social distancing is, okay? these are all things which could be protective factors against that. But again, it's a double-edged sword because ultimately it kind of makes us weaker in a way. As some people are going to probably disagree with that, but that's just my intuition, okay? So anyways, I'm not going to go into great depth about this new mutant variant that was discovered, but there was 46 mutations, 37 deletions. Apparently that's more mutations than the current Omicron variant. Whether that means anything, whether that translates into anything scary, I just find it interesting that on the day that the WHO spokesperson released that statement of an ominous warning about a more deadly variant, there's already talk circulating about a new variant. So what this means then to me is that this is not going to end. This is not going to end. And what sort of repercussions that has on the world, what temporary solutions that are being put into place now are going to just be a permanent way of life for the foreseeable future, what sort of social unrest that's going to cause, it could be potentially catastrophic. I'm not trying to fan the flames of any fear on one side or the other. Yes, we should be critical of any authoritarian measures when the government seeks to give itself more power and doesn't have a corresponding timeline for how they're going to forfeit those powers. And we should also remain cautious and vigilant and not underestimate this thing that is going around. That doesn't mean we live in fear. That doesn't mean we become shut-ins. And that doesn't mean that every little sniffle and cough we have, we start to freak out about it. It just means we need to keep our options open, guys, because this could be the beginning of the next Great Depression. On the topic of the supply chain issue is not getting better, guys. And it's actually going to get worse because you're going to have a lot of people who are missing work because of the whole thing. You can't go to work if you're sick, and a lot of people are getting this new Omicron variant. So regardless of how severe it is or whatever, you still can't go into work. So people are going to be missing work as a result, and that means production is going to be even lower than it has been. So that little bounce back that we had, we're probably going to see a few months of more shortages. But what I am seeing through my store at CanadianPreparedness.com is that a lot of the products that are manufactured domestically, either in the United States or Canada, we're actually seeing those being more readily available. We still do have to wait for a significant period of time, usually 6 to 8 weeks, but they're still available. However, the prices, of course, have gone up, and anything which requires materials that are made overseas because of high shipping costs and labor shortages over there, because something's going on over there too, God knows what, they're locking down again, so who knows. But it is contributing to some domestic issues. But the worst issues that we're seeing are with overseas products, okay? And that's namely the result of high shipping costs. The shipping costs are just through the roof. And I don't think it's going to get better for a long time, the way that the economic climate is with just all the X factors involved. It's just not looking good. So we're going to continue to have shortages. We're going to continue to probably see this market teetering on the brink of collapse. Let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. Stay warm out there. And by the way, if you ladies want to get yourself an Outdoor Survival Canada jacket, we now have brought in a women's line. This is going to be the last jacket you ever buy for winter. I guarantee you. It's way warmer than Canada Goose. I've worn both. Canada Goose is a status symbol. I'm not saying they're not good jackets. They're not better jackets than the majority of coats out there. But Outdoor Survival Canada, okay, it's in the name. This company makes high quality coats, the last coat you're going to purchase. And once you put it on, it literally gives you a warm hug when you put this jacket on. Every time I put it on, I let one of my other communist camera dudes in training, I'm training another one, and I let him put it on today, and you should have seen the expression on his face. He was like, wow. He was almost ready to put down the hammer and sickle and acquiesce to capitalism, but then his bourgeoisie boss took the coat back. Anyways, guys, you stay warm out there because it's cold outside. That jet stream is completely destroyed, and there's that too, okay? We'll talk more about that later. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.